My name is Carol Theobald and I join you today from Western Australia. It's 2 o'clock in the morning where I am, so bear in mind that if I suddenly fall asleep, you know what's happening. Welcome to the February meeting of the Zonta Says Now Intercontinental Think Tank. Please remember to keep your microphone on mute and raise the hand icon if you have any questions. You may also ask questions in the chat line. The horses in today's picture show that the Intercontinental Think Tank is up and running, and so bear that in mind. We will record today's meeting, but the conversations in the breakout rooms will not be in the final recording. So today we've got a lot to get through. So I'll put my screen on share and you can be guided into the journey that we have today. So this was the horses that I didn't have on share. I'll take them back again. You can see that screen, can you? There we are, there's the horses. And today we've got, we'll capture what we did in the last meeting. We have our focus activity, feedback from discussion of our focus activity today, international news, other business, and our next meeting. So in the chat line, could you please say hello and where you're joining from today? Pia will be monitoring our chat line. But first of all, I'd like to say that we're delighted to welcome our international president, Uta Schultz, and also welcome members of the district and international advocacy committees. Uta is a champion for Zonta Says Now and is very interested in seeing what we're doing in the Intercontinental Think Tank. Uta, would you like to say a few words before we get going?
I'm happy to, dear Carol. Well, I would say you and your team, you are the champions on the think tank Zonta Says Now. I'm very happy to be tonight in your team at 7 p.m. Sunday, German time. It's the best I could do on a Sunday evening, joining you, and I'm so much looking forward seeing you all and hearing from you. I think it's a wonderful thing to be connected once around the world, in all the countries, and congratulations to you, Carol, and your team on what you are doing to point on climate change now, on climate justice, what we demand. And I'm very happy and very curious listening to all your contributions. So thank you very much. I'm so delighted seeing you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Uta.
Thank you.
That's lovely. I'll just get back onto screen share because it keeps me on track. And with the working groups being very busy behind the scenes, putting together the papers for today's meeting, and we welcome you all wherever you are. And I was just going to have a quick look in the chat line to see where people are from today. Pia, where are people from? Has anyone put up their names yet? Pia?
Yes, we have people from all over the world. I've seen from Accra in Ghana, Luxembourg, Germany, Canada, Colorado, Switzerland, and now I can't see my chat view here, and yeah, lots of more here. India, of course, Kentucky, and yeah, that's about it, I think.
Brilliant.
Bangladesh.
Bangladesh, sorry, Bangladesh and India.
Yeah. That's
yes.
excellent.
Thank you. Thank you.
What I'd like to do now is to ask Karin Lang from Germany to reflect on what happened at the last meeting. Over to you, Karin.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm here from Sri Lanka.
Oh, yes, Sri Lanka. We
Oh,
forgot
Sri
Sri
Lanka.
Lanka. Welcome, Sri
Get the
Lanka.
sauce,
So
Mama,
nice
look at
that
the
you're
sauce.
attending.
Thank you.
So
Brilliant.
can you please mute all your mics so that we can, yeah, because there's a lot of information on two charts. And this is because our think tank in November has been really fruitful. Thanks to all of you who attended that. And one of the main outcomes was that we decided that we need a fact sheet for Sontians, which is working well for all regions, so that everyone can more easily get involved in or with Zonta Says Now. For instance, by integrating the topic of gender equal climate action into the Zonta Says No activities during the 16 days of activism. And at our November meeting, the Zonta US caucus already shared some very good ideas on this. They were distributed soon after the meeting. And of course, we started our intercontinental conversation about the impacts of climate change on women and girls and shared our experiences. And you can find some very interesting comments in the minutes or the notes from the last meeting. You may notice how dramatic the differences are, although, of course, climate change is now being felt so acutely in almost all regions of the world that it can no longer be denied, as it has been the case for many years, especially in the polluter countries. In the discussion, Christine Trenorden, our Zonta friend from the Zonta Club of Fleurieu Peninsula, South Australia, who works as an environmental lawyer and trainer for judges and lawyers on the subject, reported on the impact of some laws and policy frameworks that include gender-inclusive actions. You see here under the point circulate papers that she provided us a lot of very good information from Fiji, Laos, and Mongolia that show, for instance, how important it is to be compliant with the CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, and how this makes a difference. The reports on the outcomes of such laws and policy frameworks by the Asian Development Bank can now be studied by all of us. Christina has provided us with a summary with links to these reports, and we have circulated her paper with the agenda for today's meeting. We also learned, that's what you can see on the right side of the chart, from our Zonta friend from the Zonta Club Dhaka in Bangladesh, Hasna Yasimuddin Mudud, that she would be attending the COP27 in November in Sharm el-Sheikh. As an elected counselor of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, the IUCN, she was an official delegate. And it is with great gratitude that we received her observations and conclusions on this important point. Her paper was also circulated with the agenda for today's meeting, and it is really worth reading it, as her observations make it very clear why our watchdogging, along with like-minded NGOs, and the equal inclusion of women around the world in decision-making processes is critical to achieve global climate justice. Hasna also provided some photographs from the COP27, so you can see here the left photograph is with John Kerry, the US Special Presidential Envoy for Climate Affairs, who attended or who was part of a panel discussion Hasna attended. And then you can see Hasna with a picture of inhabitants of the Amazon region. Representatives of the Amazon region, of the Amazon countries, attended the COP27 and showed very clearly how the lifestyle of the Western industrial countries threatens and destroys their habitat and livelihoods. So hopefully, the COP27 commitment of those polluter countries to establish new funding arrangements, as well as a dedicated fund to assist so-called developing countries in responding to the loss and damages associated with the adverse effects of climate change will be operationalized and implemented soon. Many thanks again to Christine and Hasna and to all the Zontians who participated in the discussion and contributed their observations and information. And this brings me back to the main pragmatic result, our fact sheet. The working group has begun to draft the fact sheet, and thanks to Carol, who has started that with her knowledge and experiences, we could circulate it already with today's agenda. The fact sheet focuses again on the problems as well as on the solutions and on the what we can do. And in this section, we use the 5 categories or steps of the Zonta Says Now framework for action. Get the facts, lead by example, add our voice, advocate, and most important as well, collaborate with all like-minded institutions, NGOs at your place in order also to find out about their pain points, their wishes, and to have the most huge impact with your Zonta Says Now action. And what makes this fact sheet helpful is it is a reference document. So that means that each argument you will find is linked to a reference and analyzes a study, facts and figures, films, surveys, and their reliable source. For example, you will find documents from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, as well as from various United Nations organizations, as well as from NASA, for instance, or from other renowned institutions and NGOs. There are over 40 references, and these will provide a very good basis for any further research that Zontians may wish to undertake. The document is still in progress, work in progress. So if you have any initial feedback, objections, or additions, please feel free to put it in the chat. Or if you need a little more time, please email it to our main account, info@zontasaysnow.org.au. Please do so before the end of February, because we should get the document finalized as quickly as possible. And it will be a very good resource to rely on also when it comes to the topic of our focus activity today. And with this topic, dear Carol, the floor again is yours. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Karen, for that summary. So our next step we're going to look is our focus activity. And our focus activity is around the role of women in disaster preparedness. So why are we looking at this topic? In the Zonta International Statement on Climate Change, there are a number of recommendations. One of these, Zonta International calls on governments to include women in the formation of disaster preparedness and response plans that recognize the unique needs of women and girls and prioritize their health and safety, and include responses to gender-based violence. Now, the statement also calls on its membership, that's you and me, all the members of Zonta, to increase their own awareness of climate change and its gender-related consequences and raise awareness locally, include gendered climate change advocacy actions in their advocacy plans, support the inclusion of women at all levels of decision-making on environmental sustainability, promote girls' education, climate literacy, and STEM studies, and advocate for national policies that take into account women's economic opportunities so they can fully and equally participate in the economy. So let's investigate some of the issues around women and disaster preparedness and explore the actions that Zontians can take in this area. So why would we look at this topic now? Well, the impacts of climate change are felt all around us today. We've seen major social upheaval caused by heat, drought, floods, and tropical cyclones. Since the start of 2022, we've seen India and Pakistan ravaged by heat, and the recent floods there affected over 30 million people. In East Africa, the prolonged drought has put over 22 million people at risk of starvation. Europe and the Americas have experienced intense heat and drought and floods. Madagascar experienced 2 tropical storms and 3 cyclones in 6 weeks, with 1 million people affected. And last summer, closer to home, it was Western Australia's hottest on record, and in the eastern states of Australia, the floods have been relentless. Lightning across India killed nearly 1,000 people. Increased wildfires in Europe, USA and South America, snowstorms in the USA that saw thousands of flights cancelled. And as global temperatures rise, conditions will get worse for people and nature. So we need to be prepared. So how does the international community prepare for these extreme weather events, and what can we learn from them? The Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015 to 2030 outlines 7 clear targets and 4 priorities for action to prevent new and reduce existing disaster risks. The framework aims to achieve a substantial reduction of disaster risk and losses in lives, livelihoods, and health. The Sendai Framework was actually released before the Sustainable Development Goals, and this short video explains how the 2 initiatives relate to each other. I'll just click the link and we'll get ourselves moving on here. It's this one here. Let me just pause it and just share the sound. Okay.
Was the first post-2015 framework approved by member states. It has 7 key targets to substantially reduce disaster risk and losses by 2030. The Sendai framework was followed by the 2030 Development Agenda, which identified 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, to eradicate poverty and achieve sustainable development in the next 15 years. Disaster risk reduction is essential to achieve these goals. Target 1 is to reduce global disaster mortality, and Target 2 to reduce the number of affected people. These targets embrace all SDGs for a universally safer world. Target 3 is to reduce direct economic losses in relation to global GDP. Along with all the SDGs, this aims at ending poverty and promoting sustainable economic growth and decent work for all. Sendai Target 4 is to reduce disaster damage to critical infrastructure and disruption of basic services. This intends to increase everyone's health and well-being, access to education, resilient infrastructure, and to make human settlements sustainable and safe. Target 5 is to increase the number of countries with national and local disaster risk reduction strategies by 2020. Making habitats safer internationally will assist in ending poverty and hunger. Target 6 is to enhance international cooperation to developing countries, covering all SDGs. This is key to the betterment of everyone, wherever we live. Target 7 is to increase access to multi-hazard early warning systems and disaster risk information. It combats climate change and its impacts as disaster risks rise. If these targets are achieved, the Sendai Framework will help make the Sustainable Development Goals a reality.
So that was quite an interesting video. It summarises things quite quickly, which was good. The Sendai Framework and the Sustainable Development Goals provide the context, but how do we focus on taking gender equal climate action? This concept note, released by the UN Women in 2019, provides an introduction to the Women's Resilience to Disasters programme. It explains how gender inequality leads to women being disproportionately impacted by disasters and how climate change is a disaster threat multiplier. As we know, as we know, disasters affect women and men differently. Gender gaps, such as unequal access to opportunities, land, finance and technology, increase women's vulnerability during disasters. Women may also be influenced by society's expectations and the gendering of roles. On top of all this, women are underrepresented in decision-making processes at all levels. However, the good news is that women are also key agents of change with unique knowledge to ensure the effectiveness and sustainability of disaster risk reduction and resilience action. In short, the Women's Resilience to Disasters programme shows that women can take gender-equal climate action. This follow-up paper released in 2021 shows how to close the gender gaps in disaster risk reduction and resilience through leveraging women's voice and leadership, having more gender and age disaggregated data so we know how things are impacting on women and we can measure them, developing laws and policies and strategies that plan to improve gender equality, increasing financial resources to make gender equal climate action and leadership a reality for women, and including more women in risk reduction planning and activities, and improving women's resilience to hazards, for example, by having equal access to early warning systems and securing women's resilient livelihoods and businesses. It's quite a lot there, isn't there? So the links that Christine sent us which were distributed with the notes, show how a legal framework can be used to advance gender equality and strengthen women's resilience to climate change and disasters. For example, we can have laws around gender equality and non-discrimination, laws that address climate change and disaster risk management, and laws that improve women's socio-economic resilience, such as land and property ownership, access to finance, education and training, employment and investment in business, and laws to reduce gender-based violence. So we also have to make sure that policies are informed by sex and age disaggregated data so that initiatives can be monitored and reported to deliver on gender outcomes. So the Women's Resilience to Disasters programme is currently being rolled out in the Pacific, the Caribbean, Lake Chad Basin and the Sahel region. So check out the WRD Hub that has loads of information, including this short video that shows in 6 minutes what women's resilience to disasters looks like on the ground in the Pacific.
As eco-based, our land is our treasure, and our land is being washed away.
When I saw the impacts of climate change in Kiribati, that's when I decided that I'm going to bring about a change in the lives of my people. When I came to this piece of land, this land was already washed away. The first thing we need to do is to stop water coming in, so we build seawalls. We set out to renovate the buildings and establish a health center, because how can we be climate change resilient people when we are not healthy?
During the last flooding, the water came in all the way here, and the level of the water is up to here. So after that flooding, we built our house. This is what it is called Tepuya, and we elevate it so that when the flooding comes again, we can all come here and sit here, and we call it our evacuation center.
We had a cyclone before, and we really suffered from it, so we learned a good lesson from those past cyclones. Tropical cyclone Harold came, I really prepared everything for my family, including the tarpaulin, the dry clothes for my children, for me and my husband, the food, enough food for us, the fresh water, a blanket and some cushion, as we have a safe place under our house for us to lived there when when the strong wind came. We were staying there, and we see that we have enough space for some other people in the community to come and stay there with us, and they did.
When I came to Raki Market 12 years ago, we used to sell from the ground. What I noticed, there were a lot of elderly women from the village sitting on the ground and selling their produce. It was quite dirty, it was very unhygienic, and it was smelly most of the times. And I started to go around and talk to government officials in Raki and asking them a way to improve the place of selling. We visit the DO's office here in Raki, we reach up to the Commissioner Western's office in Lautoka, and we even paid a bus from here to visit the Prime Minister's office in Suva. The government fund the first building, the farmer's shed in Raki Market. When Winston came, it took everything from us. It also took our market, something that the women of Raki rely on. It's their livelihood. This market, it's built to Category 5 standard, and it's in the center of town. It's also like a community center in our town. Meetings happens here from different villages. This market has been an evacuation center.
Yeah, my name is Aling Honorio, and I'm from Kiribati. I work with the Kiribati Organic Farmers Association, and I try to assist the community in the Out Islands to build their resilience against climate change by facilitating training, especially adding value to coconut products to improve their livelihood, get income, and do the replanting of coconuts, and also to try and assist the communities in bridging the gap between what's offered to the communities in terms of improving their capacity to enhance their lifestyle in the Out Islands.
I manage my bee farm on my own. I do harvesting, daily routine work on hive, and bottling, packing, and find my own customers. By doing this bee farming, I have managed to do financial securities for my kids' future. Because of this climate change, the weather pattern is changing, which is affecting the production level of honey. I am very passionate about bee farming, and I have teached a lot of women around in bee farming.
If we are to empower women, we need to understand where they're coming from, what their challenges are. Those could be personal questions, but from the personal questions, let's devise strategies that can help them.
The amazing thing is, there are more women like me in Kiribati today that are building resilient communities.
All the women are talented women, smart, knowing the safety of the family during the disaster and the climate change.
You know, women everywhere are very resilient. They know what a disaster is. They know how to look after their family and look after their business during the disaster, and from that they grow.
Very interesting short video. It captures everything very, very well. So now I'd like to we'd like to hear now about the Commission on the Status of Women from Julie Schroeder in Colorado, USA. Try to put your microphones on mute if you're not speaking. Thank you. Over to you, Julie.
Thank you, Carol. I appreciate it. And if you're not on mute, please go ahead and mute your microphone so everyone can hear. Thank you for coming today, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. The Commission on the Status of Women is who they are. In case you don't know, they're a principal global intergovernmental body exclusively dedicated to promoting gender equality and the empowerment of women. So right now they are involved in the CSW 67. It's their 67th year. And the title of their theme this year is Innovation and Technological Change, Education in the Digital Age. However, this is through the lens of gender equal climate action, climate justice. And how does that work? We're going to talk about that in a second. That starts next month, and I'm putting the registration link in the chat. If anybody wants to register, they have virtual. It's a hybrid meeting, virtual and in person. The in-person is in New York City. CSW 66 was on climate change, disaster risk reduction, which we're going to talk about a little bit more today. And that is actually the result of climate change. So it's a super important and essential topic for the empowerment and the safety of women and girls. Next slide, please. Each year, Zonta International releases a statement for the CSW that many other women's organizations endorse. For example, the statement for a CSW 66, as I said, was the climate change environmental disaster risk reduction. And it was endorsed by many organizations like the Graduate Women International, International Council of Women, International Federation of Business and Professional Women, and Seroptimus International. The CSW 66 statement is still very relevant in today's discussions about gender equal climate action. Some of the topics covered are gender equality and national action plans, climate justice, gender balanced governing bodies, girls' access to education at all times, all levels, all nations. Having basic education on climate change, climate adaptation and mitigation plans to address women's unique needs in ensuring women's full participation in the economy. It also talks about including women in the formation of disaster preparedness and response plans. As you saw in the video prior, that is an essential task that women are taking on and doing great work. Developing policies and frameworks that integrate gender equality is also part of this, and utilizing women's experience as decision makers, educators, caregivers, community leaders, and experts across all sectors to develop long-term climate change strategies. Next slide, thank you. So this year's CSW theme is around innovation and technological change in education in the digital age. As you see in yellow, does this theme relate to disaster preparedness? It absolutely does, and I'll walk you through that. It may not seem like it, but it's a multifaceted issue. So using technology to improve women's resilience. The U.S. Women's Caucus at the UN, which is an NGO, and they hold hands, they're sisters to CSW and UN Women. They prepared 6 briefing papers for CSW 67, and actually they will have some virtual events there. 2 of them were already circulated for today's meeting regarding the intersection of gender, technology, and the environment. Also, the first recommendation states that technology offers much hope towards managing and mitigating the damage of climate disasters for population and of women and children. The term hope is essential. We really need to hold on to hope for better through our action. So increase all means of stabilization is also essential. That means natural resource management, disaster planning and monitoring and communications. The latter is about data. So expanding data to be gender equal is important. Other recommendations are targeting funding for educating women and girls in technical environmental fields, business, government, and NGOs collaborating to improve environmental problem solving, which I'll have to add innovation and women-owned businesses, women-led government, women-owned NGOs, or women directing NGOs is a big part of the empowerment. So also we need to strengthen policies around gender and environment. This year's CSW 67 will cover all of that from women all over the globe. Next slide, please. Using technology to improve women's resilience. Let's talk a little bit about agriculture, because that is where many women are employed. 70% in South Asia, 60% in sub-Saharan Africa work in agriculture. Globally, it's 43%. In Europe, it's 30%, with most of the women older than 35 years old. So there's an area of empowering young women to develop agricultural skills. If these women had the same access to productive resources as men do, they could increase the yields in their farm by 20 to 30%. The Gender, Rurality, and Technology briefing paper recommends the following: prioritizing learning opportunities to use technologies in agriculture, involving women in the development of programs that use information and communication technology, having gender responsive policies in the area of climate smart agriculture, making internet access affordable, and prioritizing biodiversity and local cooperative land ownership. From a disaster management perspective, the more farmers that are connected to the internet, the easier it will be to circulate early warnings of disaster, what to do and where to go. Next slide, please. The other 4 papers from the U.S. Women's Caucus at the United Nations for CSW 67 talk about these 4 topics. We are happy to send those to you. They are both very well researched and written, or all 4 of them, not both. So please email us at info@zontasaysnow.com.au to receive your copies. And again, CSW 67 starts March 6th. You can register and you may be able to listen to some of the members of this NGO to talk about these areas. Next slide, please. So Gender in Disaster Australia. If you've never seen a website that combines gender and disaster, this one will really spark your interest. It's a very well-designed website, and they talk about information about being prepared, but also applying it to gender equality. So disasters can apply to anyone, we know that. So example, they show how important it is for men and women to work together when planning for a bushfire. In the US, we call them a wildfire. Regardless, they're fires that envelope swaths of land and destroy homes and businesses. So these comments, why gendered fire planning, were made after various bushfires in Australia. I'm just going to read a couple because of time. So let's see. Number 4, the kids where the parents fought about leaving. There was trauma afterwards. The next one, women escaped alone or with children, often in terrifying circumstances, and had limited autonomy. That statement alone is the reason why we need gender equal climate action and gender equal disaster preparedness, because of women in charge for the children, elderly parents, the belongings, important papers, and having autonomy and safety. Okay, so next slide, please. Here are some other disasters. We saw 4 earlier, and these are 4 more. Earthquakes, Turkey and Syria, they lost more than 30,000 people thus far. Volcanic eruption, tsunami. So the tsunami happened after the volcanic eruption in Tonga, and it was devastating for this island nation. Toxic chemicals in the USA, in Ohio, train derailed and poured out toxic chemicals, forcing evacuation in a very large area. Also, it's polluting the groundwater. Our fresh water is so vulnerable that groundwater will not be cleaned for a very long time. So what do people need to do? They issued an emergency to drink bottled water. But is that the solution? I don't think so. I think we can create better, more innovative solutions. Other toxic chemicals, in Jordan, there was an explosion. It happens, and it's making our climate worse. And conflict, last but not least, conflict, Ukraine, Afghanistan, Ethiopia, Yemen. All of these countries are experiencing conflict, which is indicative of food and water insecurity, which is a result of climate change. All right, then. So we are going to do a little exercise. I'm going to send this over to Bobby Cardillo. She's going to take us through this exercise so that we can learn a bit more about how we prepare for disasters.
Thank you so much, Julie. I just want to get you all in the mood because you're all going to participate in this. I want you to imagine, you've just heard about all the disasters there are in the world. I want you to imagine one coming to you. You have notice. You have 15 minutes to prepare and leave. What are you going to bring with you? What do you think should be in your disaster preparedness kit, which might help you save some time in gathering up your supplies? But first of all, think about what those supplies are, and I want you to put your answers in the chat line. And then we're all going to talk about them. So go ahead. I'll give you a couple minutes, put some thoughts. What would you take if you only had 15 minutes to prepare? Just give me a start. Put in 1, and we'll go from there. All right, let's see. I see bottled water, warm clothes, personal documents, keys, radio. That's a good one. What kind of a radio? Your personal phone, your mobile, your money. Official papers. You have to think about what kind of papers those are. What do you really need? What are you going to have to prove in the future if you don't have a home to come back to? Money. There's one. Flashlights. That's a very important one. You don't know where you're going to be. Passwords. Oh my goodness. How important is that? How much time does it take to recreate them if you don't have them written down? Batteries. Batteries for perhaps that flashlight we talked about. How about batteries for other things? Let's see. Your red folder. Oh, that's a wonderful idea. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And of course, your dogs. Animals are certainly, if you have them, they're very important and they have their own needs. Perhaps they need their own backpack prepared that they can carry on their own body. Wouldn't that be a good idea? And your husband, yes, I think that would be a critical piece to bring with you. Sleeping bags. An SOS capsule with your name. That's a great idea. Okay, we have had a pepper spray. Oh my goodness, I hadn't thought of that. But yes, I mean, if you end up with in a shelter, we all know that violence against women happens in large degree in shelters. So that would be a very good thing to have with you. All right, well, you have done a great job. I don't know if I've missed any here. Let's go back a little bit. See if I've missed any. Medicine, I didn't mention medicines, but certainly that you should have an extra supply ready to go with you. Important papers like passports and certificates. Okay. Emergency radio, we didn't say that you need to have that with the batteries so that you can operate if you have no electricity. Okay, I think we pretty much got a lot of ideas. I'm going to turn to the next slide now and see how well we did. How many of these items did we actually think of? And did we leave any out? And I want to start first by pointing out the overnight bag. And I'm just going to tell you a story about my daughter who lived in Cannon Beach, Oregon for a number of years and was subject to tsunamis coming into the west coast of Oregon, and particularly in that town where the water would not have a way to escape. It would be held between the mountains and inundate the town. They had steel drums for their disaster preparedness kit to keep water out. So that's something to think about. So we have an overnight bag with a change of clothes, toiletries, and sanitary supplies. An adequate amount of food and water. You'll have to decide how much that is and think about whether you're going to be escaping in a car or whether you're going to be on foot as to how much you can bring with you. Woolen blankets for sure. How about identification and important items like your photo ID? We mentioned those, the passport. How about personal items like photos and your will? We didn't mention that, but not only that, I was thinking about important papers. This time of year, I want to bring all my tax papers because those come once a year in the United States and are critical for establishing our financial histories, especially if we lose other papers. Jewelry, insurance. Now there's something you're really going to want to have with you in case your house is destroyed. A USB with important files on it. That's actually a very clever idea to save a lot of space. Medicines, first aid kit, and prescriptions. Your mobile phone and charger, those are things we got. The battery-powered radio, flashlight, and extra batteries, we got those. How about contact information? We didn't write that down. You'll want to be able to contact your doctor, your local government, and of course your power company. So I think we did pretty well. Some of the things to think about is, will you be able to access your money if you are caught in a disaster? How will you do that? What about your land title or house deeds? Will you need that with you? Pia has said cash. Of course, cash is a critical piece. I want you to think about, would these items be the same no matter which continent you live on, or would they be different? And also, would you have to think about every kind of disaster? So there might be something in there if you're facing fire and something else in there if you're facing flood. And as I mentioned in Cannon Beach, they had to think about steel drums instead of overnight bags. And beyond that, where will you get the information you need in order to make plans, in order to move forward after this disaster? So I think we've done very well. We got a lot of great ideas. And you also want to think about if you have to bring anyone else with you, like elderly parents or children who are not able to prepare their own packs. What do they need to have, and what do you need to have in order to sustain them if you're out of your home for an indefinite amount of time? So anyway, at this point, I think we are ready to move on and continue our conversation about women and disaster preparedness. And so I'm going to turn it over to Pia Hultgren from Sweden to take us on the journey. Over to you, Pia.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I also would like to announce that we have Helen from New Zealand also with us. So we have almost all over the world members. And now we are going to split into breakout rooms, and Carol will arrange that for us. And we will try to discuss in these groups for several minutes what Zonta can do for this, prepare to be prepared, and how we can make a difference, and discuss in our clubs, and maybe also make this sheet, fill in this sheet that you will see later here. Yeah. So yeah, just be creative and discuss with each other. And maybe it's very different from which part of the world you come from, and which disaster that you actually are facing.
Okay, Julie and Pia, did you want to share your experiences?
Absolutely.
Yes,
Pia, you go first, and then I'll go.
Okay, so. Thank you, Julie. Yeah, thank you. I can see that the chat has been emptied. Is that true? My chat is empty. Anyway.
No, it's not.
Anyway, in our group, we had Jutta, and we had also Helen from New Zealand. And she actually shared her very, very recent experience about this. Because they just a week or two ago had this bad cyclone hitting the North Island, and so they just experienced how it was to pick things that they needed and run away, sort of. And her conclusion, she needed to run to work, but her conclusion was that it's very important. We cannot overstate the government's responsibility in this, with having the right information and preparedness, and also she talked a lot about to have proper measurements before the disaster, that figures are right and everything, which probably it wasn't, because she talked about that. Yeah, and still they have no, in parts of New Zealand, they have no power and telecommunications. And this is 1 week after it happened. And then we had, also Jutta had some comments before you left. And one important thing is, of course, to raise awareness in our clubs about what's going on all around the world. And that's a very important thing we can do, about raise awareness about climate change, and also about these nature disasters and things that can happen. Thank you. Julie?
Thanks, Pia. We had a very stimulating conversation, and I want to just throw out that if you want to put anything in the chat about some really great points you learned or heard, please go ahead and put it in. We'd love to know what your thoughts are while I'm talking. So I wrote down just a few choice comments that I felt were so important. And one of the first was that when we work on in our clubs in our local area and rising up through the district or maybe a caucus, we're working together, we're putting Zonta first in front of the problem. And I love that, being in front of the problem. So from there, our conversation just became so rich. We talked about how the video of the women in the Pacific Islands brings in some connection to inspire us, and how that's an important part of getting our clubs in Zonta to want to take more action. We talked about working in our local area, empowering our governments and local community on how to have gender equal safe shelters. How does that work? Where do we go? You know, how do we tell everyone where we go? And then also to empower our clubs to create these disaster preparedness kits and teach others how to do the same in case of evacuation, looking at our local issues. So 2 women, Annette and Sabina from Switzerland, we talked about how they have avalanches, floods, and now they're in an extreme drought. So then food insecurity and water insecurity actually become a part of the problem. And highlighting all of this is that mostly women are responsible, as we saw in the video, for getting everyone to safety, getting the food, getting the water, the clothing, the batteries, all those things that we talked about. So I found that very inspiring, that we were all connected on the same strategies as Zontians, and it made more sense to all of us on how we can bring this home to our clubs and our districts and create some advocacy programs and some service projects to work on disaster preparedness, management, safety, health, food and water, and security. So that was what we talked about. Oh, Carol, you're up. Yeah.
Any other groups want to share? Karen, what was happening in your group?
Yes, it was also really interesting. And yeah, I'd like to add that, of course, there was the idea to investigate in how disaster plans are working at the community level, because we don't know enough about it. And for instance, in Germany, this might be very interesting for the others. We have got a federal structure, and every community has got its own plans, its own entities which are responsible. In this case, the disaster plans are made by men. They forget about the needs of women, like hygienic needs, for instance. Yeah, so that's what we have to watch on. And then Deruba told us from India that they are really very well prepared by their weather department, by the government. They are using really different channels to inform the people about tsunamis, stuff like that. Earthquakes is not that as easy, because you're lots of times you don't know about them. But she also asks, okay, they also say that they want to have safe shelters for the girls. They do have shelters. They have certain shelters, but she is not sure about the fact that they always hear from girls, from women who were raped, who were violated. So this is a huge problem as well in Bangladesh, but as well, of course, I think here in Germany, if it comes to catastrophes and everywhere. So we have to be very, very aware of the problem of violence against women in this cases, and advocate on that as well, to have the right alarm systems and the right protection for women and girls.
Thanks very much, Karen. That's great. I'm very mindful of the time, and so what I was going to suggest is that some of you will have, what I suggest is that if you have chance to fill out the framework, just play with it, have a talk with other Zontians, And here's just an example of one which I just threw together, but it gives you an idea of a few different things that can be done. Your frameworks will look different, but everyone have a go at completing a framework and sending it in, so as we can sort of get some ideas of what sorts of things would be appropriate in your area. Because we may find that the frameworks look different in different continents, and so it'd be useful just to share ideas between us. I'm very aware that we've had our feedback, which we're talking about. I want to hand over now to Jane Austin in Minnesota. Jane, would you like to share the international news, please?
All right. Thank you. I'll be pretty brief. Please be aware that Zonta International is developing a special Zonta Says Now logo, so we can have a good identity. And we're also preparing the Zonta Says Now webpage. We'll have a lot of great resources. We hope to be able to share with the, both of these with you soon. Members have been asking questions about Brisbane. A lot of us are traveling great distances, and we want to ensure that the convention is as sustainable as possible. We want to let you know that District 3 Zonta Says Now think tank in Australia is working closely with the convention committee on the issue, and we'll be researching practical and affordable ways to make the convention as green as possible. We'll also be investigating and trialing speakers and topics for the workshop. So pay attention and look forward to seeing you in Brisbane and learning more about climate. And with that, I'll turn it over to Angela to talk more about upcoming international events.
Over to you, Angela.
Perhaps, excuse me, may I add something? Jane, I've been just recently to Brisbane and to the convention venue, and they are very, very sensitive about any topics of climate. And they do a lot to reduce all the impact on the climate, negative impact on the climate. I have a really good feeling what they're doing, especially as an international convention venue. So we can be very happy that they take so much care. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Uta. Okay, Angela. Over to you, Angela.
COP28 will be held in Dubai in November of this year. And so in preparedness to that, we're suggesting that maybe we start working towards what our voice will be for the COP28. We're talking about conducting pre-surveys with our members. What do they know? Where are our knowledge gaps around gender equality, climate change, and disaster preparedness, not only as clubs, but as individuals? And then they can take from there, the clubs can work on developing the resources, and the districts can work to help make sure that we bring everyone up to an equal place so that we know what is going on in our local areas and what we can go forward with and where our deficiencies are. We can hold webinars and share these resources with members, share the stories of advocacy ideas and the actions and what our experiences have been. Once we do all of that, we need to go back and do a post-survey and see if our members have actually learned and reassess where's our educational deficits that we need to help bring people up for awareness as to what is going on. And then compile all this and see about presenting at COP28 or even at our own convention workshop this information so that we as a community of the globe can all be working for our specific areas. And if you like that idea, would you like to be part of it? Please add into the chat, because ideally we want a team on every continent working in the specifics of their area. And so what my knowledge base is in District 5 in the US will be different than what the group knowledge base is in Sri Lanka. And the information and the preparedness needs to be targeted to those specific areas. So again, please, if you're interested, would like to be a part of this at the continental level, please make sure we know that in the chat. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Eric for other business.
Are there any other business or questions if anybody would like to ask?
Yes, Eric, I wanted to ask that I was told that to attend the COP meeting in Dubai, you have to be a UK citizen. Is it true?
No, I don't think so. Carol, could you just elaborate? I don't think so. One has to be a UK citizen.
I'm sorry, Eric. I was just writing something in the chat and I missed what the question was. What would you say? Sorry.
No. Dilrubaji has a question. To attend the COP28 in Dubai, does one need to be a UK citizen?
No, but people join the COP conventions from all over the world. So, they have the delegate side, but they also have all the fringe events. So it's the fringe events that you're probably more involved with. And so you'd have to find out more information about it. Okay.
Right.
Near the time.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Dilruba.
No, never mind. I got it.
I've just put a little note in the chat. If you like the idea of the project that Angela was talking about, could you indicate yes or no in the chat line? Okay, thank you. So were there any other issues? I'll just carry on with you. Back to you, Eric.
Anything else? The next meeting would be on Sunday, the 19th of March at 12 noon UTC time. And the timings have been given below.
Yes. So there's a few things we'd like to make sure that we can get finalized by the next meeting. We'd like to get that fact sheet finalized. So if you can send through your information, that would be great to zontasaysnow.org.au. And also the fill out a framework for the disaster preparedness ideas. Just send those through, so it'll give something for the team to work on to try and get some resources moving. And we'd like to convene a survey team to kick off the project if there's people would like to do that. So please indicate as well if you'd like to be involved with that. All right, there's lots of fun things that we can do here. And but I just want to thank you all for your contribution to today's meeting. And many thanks to Uta for your ongoing interest and support, and to the International and District Advocacy Committee chairs for joining today's meeting. It was great to see you. We look forward to working with you all in the future. We'll circulate the notes from today's meeting, a link to the video of the meeting, and progress on the fact sheets, frameworks, and formation of the survey team. But I'd like to finish with this quote from the Climate book by Greta Thunberg. And Bobby Cardillo has worked her way through it and pointed this one out to me. Greta says, to me, hope is not something that is given to you. It is something you have to earn, to create. It cannot be gained passively through standing by and waiting for someone else to do something. Hope is taking action. It is stepping outside your comfort zone. And if a bunch of weird school kids were able to get millions of people to start changing their lives, just imagine what we could all do together if we really tried. Anyway, on that inspirational note, we'll wrap up today's meeting, and I look forward to seeing you in March. Okay. Keep smiling and have fun. Bye.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
all.
Have a nice
Bye.